Yamaha.
Hello dear viewers. Today's episode is a bit of a case of alternative history in the making. As a teen back in the 90s, I didn't exactly have the financial means to afford much hardware, so when I did get a piece of gear, it was often a case of extensive considerations. In the mid-90s, these considerations boiled down to a choice between two machines that were both similar in the demographic they were designed for. Newcomers to music production that wanted to create what is known today as electronic music. At the same time, the approach the machines offered were quite different from each other. While Roland's MC303 promised to be an all-in-one box of wonders that provided both sounds and a sequencer to turn me into a proper live act, the star of today's video was a more traditional keyboard that happened to be packed with electronic sounds. Yamaha CS1x had the proper keyboard that the MC303 lacked, but required an external sequencer to get any tracks going. Long story short, I got an MC303 in the end, and the result of that decision can be observed in my video about the MC303. I spent what must have been thousands of hours on the MC303, and apart from all the shortcomings it brought with it, I am still very fond of it to this day. But what if I had decided otherwise? Well, we are about to find out later in this video. Before we rewrite history though, let's have a closer look at the inception of the CS1x. The CS1x was released in 1996 and was Yamaha's attempt on cashing in on the ongoing techno craze of the mid-90s. Just like many other manufacturers, Yamaha wanted a piece of the dance music cake and released a dedicated synth into the market that, in 96, was already beginning to clog up with dedicated gear. As already mentioned, Roland released the MC303 and after that had sold like hotcakes, followed up with other similar products. There were also other players around, like Midi, who themselves offered a whole slew of techno synths, and Emu did a dedicated dance version of their popular rec sound modules. Wherever you looked in 96, everyone seemed to try to cash in into this new music trend, and most approaches usually followed the same technological path. Instead of proper analog hardware, manufacturers were sticking to what was the technological standard of the day, and that meant romplers. Just like everyone else, Yamaha transplanted their mid-19th synth engine, in this case AWM2, into a dedicated flashy-looking case, added some knobs for real-time control, and had their sound designers come up with something electronic sounding. Interestingly, for the CS1x, this whole process is very well documented too. I found a short report in German Keyboards magazine from 96 that describes the inception of the CS1x. In 95, Yamaha's European division wanted a dance music product to sell to teens like myself, and therefore asked Yamaha Japan to create some dedicated hardware, twisty knobs, flashy case and all, which they did in record time. They then used sounds from the QS300, the then popular Raber's Babe synth workstation, as a foundation for the CS1x sounds and managed to push out the final product in only 10 months. So I guess what we got in the end was a cut down QS300 in a flashy shell, complete with knobs for real-time control over synth parameters because you know, techno. The finished product came in the famous blue shell that was also used for the Yamaha AN1X. As intended, it featured quite a few real-time control knobs on the upper left. Next to the volume knob, there are controls for attack and release, cutoff and resonance, as well as two assignable knobs. There's a pitch wheel and a mod wheel, which comes with a really nice twist. The two scene buttons can be used to save and recall two sets of controller settings, so basically they give you a chance to recall two variations of each pattern of the CS1x. And what is a very clever idea, if you push and hold both buttons, you can use the mod wheel to seamlessly blend between both parameter sets. This feature creates much more interesting sound sweeps than you can achieve by twisting just two knobs with your two hands at the same time. Next to the real-time control section, there's a display and some more controls for the ARP and patch selection. There's a numpad for data input and again to the right a matrix control section for instant access to all kinds of controls and settings. You pick the section with this knob and can change parameters with a row of knobs at the bottom. This is actually an ingenious alternative to extensive menu diving on the tiny display and something I wish more modern synths would feature. On the very right there's a raised edge that's there for a reason. This is where Yamaha wanted you to park your SU10 sampler that perfectly fits this blank space. On the back, there's a Midi trio and something we don't see too often on a synth, It's an 8-pin mini DIN socket to connect the CS1X to the serial port of a PC or Mac. The host select switch lets you pick the type of connection, either Midi, PC 9-pin or 25-pin for Mac. So if you get a CS1X with a non-working Midi socket, you might want to check the switch first. Another rare find is the 3.5mm stereo audio input socket. The CS1X can't process the incoming audio signal with internal effects or anything, but this way you can connect your SU sampler or any other gear and use both without the need for an external audio mixer. This is a feature that can also be found on the Unodrum and synth, for example, and something every Volca user would love to see on their Volcas, I guess. Next are much less exotic ports for foot switch, foot controller and foot volume. A clicky power switch, the socket for the power adapter, sockets for stereo output and a stereo headphone output. Before we listen to what the CS1X can do, let's have a quick look at the sound engine. Yamaha's AWM2 engine seems to still be used today, and essentially is a sample-based digital subtractive synthesis that follows the trusted path of oscillator, filter and amp stages. All three feature dedicated envelope generators with controls for ADSR, there's a single LFO that can modulate pitch, filter and amp, and there's an FX unit with reverb, chorus and a third assignable type of FX. The CS1X allows for the stacking of 4 of the 128 presets and user patches into what the manual calls a performance. Sounds can be layered or split on the keyboard. On top of all that, the CS1X is also XG compatible. The extended General MIDI standard derives from the General MIDI standard, which offers 128 standardized instrument sounds. Yamaha's XG extension increased that set to a massive 480 instrumental sounds and 11 drum kits. These sounds can be accessed in performance mode on MIDI channels 5 to 16, or you can turn your CS1X into a fully blown XG player in multi-mode. So let's do that for a minute while I play some glorious Voxelmod GZ Doom with the music set to external MIDI, so the CS1X provides us with some killer MIDI tunes to accompany the on-screen killing. So usually the next thing I do at this stage of the video is to play some patches, but this time around I thought about something a little different and created a number of short demo tracks with some of the preset patches I like. Let's pretend it's 1996 again and I just got a CS1X instead of a Roland MC 303. Let's see what I would have come up with if things had played out differently back then. The first track was inspired by preset 91, Miss You organ patch that is as much house organ as any organ patch can get. This is House Organ 64. The inspiration for demo track number 2 came from a distorted kick drum I found in patch 123, the B900 drum kit. This is Hard Trance Racer. The tree of demos is completed by a track inspired by the built-in arpeggiator called Arp-A-Gheddon.
You are approaching Saturn. You are only seconds away. I have arranged for you to meet my companion. He will lead you much endlesser. Please don't disappoint him. He doesn't like that.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century. Humankind stands on the edge of the interactive age. You have come a long way. But are you ready for the future?
So these were the demos, and for me, they sure were fun to make. It was actually stunning how they all came together in what felt just like a few minutes each. The individual sounds of the CS1X really fit together very well and are more than suitable for the type of music that I created. Comparing the sounds of the CS1X to the Roland MC 303, it's pretty obvious that the CS1X has a lot more quality sounds and is a ton more versatile because you can create your own patches from scratch. The only thing where I feel the MC303 clearly comes out on top are the drum sounds. Those included in the CS1X feel a lot less punchy to my ears. But again, this could probably be taken care of if you create custom patches crafting your own drum sounds. All in all, and ignoring that it lacks the MC303 sequencer, I'd say the CS1X is the better sounding mid-90s techno starter synth. Given that it's widely available and dirt cheap second-hand, it's a great piece of kit if you feel you need to dig out those white Raving gloves and catch up on your mid-90s dream of becoming a dance music producer. If you indeed do so now, have a look at some of my other videos. There's lots more other great cheap 90s gear to be discovered. That's it for today, so see you soon with another synth.